INFJs are known for being calm, wise, and caring. They're often the ones people turn to when they're hurting. They give comfort, offer support, and seem to hold it all together, even when life gets hard. But behind that calm presence, many INFJs are carrying heavy emotional scars. Scars that would break someone else if they had to feel them even for a day. The truth is, INFJs don't show their pain the way others do. They've learned to hide it. They push it down, cover it up, or turn it into something that looks peaceful on the outside. This doesn't mean they're not hurting. It means they've built ways to survive that don't involve falling apart in front of others. Part of this comes from their nature. INFJs feel everything deeply. Pain, assault and pain, joy, fear, disappointment, it all cuts to the core, but they don't always show it. They don't want to burden others. They don't want to explain feelings that are hard to put into words. And they don't want to be seen as weak or too much. Because of this, many people have no idea how much an INFJ has been through. They see the steady face, the calm voice, the patient listening. What they don't see is the storm underneath, the sleepless nights, the overthinking, the silent grief, the wounds that never really healed. This video is about those hidden scars, the ones INFJs carry. We'll explore 6 ways INFJs hide the pain that most people would never be able to handle. These are not signs of weakness. They are signs of quiet strength, methods of survival developed by people who feel deeply but choose to keep going anyway. Way number 1. Internalizing pain. One of the most common ways INFJs hide emotional pain is by internalizing it. Instead of expressing their hurt out loud, they turn it inward. They try to figure it out on their own. They process the pain silently, in private. To the outside world, everything might seem fine. But inside, there's a deep emotional struggle going on. This starts early in life. Many INFJs learn from a young age that showing pain doesn't always lead to comfort. Maybe when they opened up, they were told to toughen up. Maybe they were told they were too emotional or too sensitive. Maybe they felt like their pain didn't matter. So over time, they stopped sharing. They learned that it was easier or safer to hold everything in. As adults, this habit becomes a coping strategy. When something hurts, INFJs don't reach out. They go quiet. They disappear for a while. They think through the situation from every angle, trying to understand what went wrong, how it made them feel, and what it says about the people involved. This deep thinking becomes a way to take control of the pain, but it also becomes a kind of prison, because they never let the pain out. This internalization isn't about pride, it's about fear and exhaustion. INFJs fear that if they open up, they'll be misunderstood or dismissed. They worry that their emotions are too heavy for others to carry, and they don't want to be a burden, so they carry it alone, even when it hurts. What makes this harder is that INFJs are so good at making others feel safe. They listen with care. They offer comfort. They ask deep questions. But they rarely give that same attention to their own pain. When they're hurting, they retreat inward, where no one can see them. And because they've spent so long doing this, people don't think to ask if something's wrong. This way of handling pain often leads to long-term emotional weight. INFJs may appear calm on the surface, but inside, they're still carrying wounds from years ago. A betrayal, a lost friendship, a childhood trauma, it stays with them. They go over it again and again, trying to find meaning or closure. But without release, the pain just builds. In some cases, this leads to burnout or emotional shutdown. The INFJ becomes numb, not because they don't feel, but because they've felt too much for too long. They may withdraw from others, lose interest in things they once loved, or become emotionally flat. It's not depression in the medical sense. It's emotional overload from carrying too much for too long without help. Despite all this, INFJs often don't talk about their pain. If someone asks how they're doing, they say, "I'm fine." If someone offers to listen, they deflect. They might even smile or make a joke, but inside, they're struggling. Internalizing pain doesn't mean they don't want connection. It means they've been hurt before and don't know how to safely share their emotions anymore. And until someone comes along who sees past the mask, they'll keep hiding their scars. Way number 2. Creating emotional masks. Another way INFJs hide their pain is by creating emotional masks. These masks aren't fake personalities. They're protective layers, carefully built versions of themselves that feel safe to show the world. While they may look calm, confident, or even happy, the truth underneath is often very different. INFJs are excellent observers. They notice what others expect. They know how to blend in. So when they're hurting, they don't lash out or seek attention. They adjust their behavior. They become what the moment needs, smiling when they want to cry, being strong when they feel weak, making others feel better even when they're breaking inside. This mask helps them get through tough days. It helps them avoid questions they don't want to answer. It lets them function when they don't have the strength to explain what's really going on. But it comes at a cost. Wearing a mask means hiding the truth. And for INFJs, who value authenticity so deeply, that feels like a betrayal of self. Every time they smile through pain, they feel a little more disconnected from who they really are. Every time they say, "I'm okay," when they're not, they build another wall between their inner world and the outside one. What makes this more complicated is that the mask often works. People believe it. They assume the INFJ is doing well. They compliment their strength, their kindness, their calm presence. And the INFJ, in return, keeps wearing the mask. Because it seems to make things easier. But underneath, the pain is still there. It hasn't gone away, it's just been hidden. And the longer it stays hidden, the heavier it becomes. Eventually, this emotional masking can lead to deep fatigue. It takes energy to pretend. It takes effort to hold in tears, to fake a smile, to give advice while silently breaking. INFJs may find themselves feeling exhausted after social events, needing days alone just to feel whole again. They may also start to lose their sense of self. When you're always performing, even for good reasons, it becomes hard to remember who you are without the mask. This confusion adds to the emotional strain, making recovery even harder. Still, INFJs continue doing it because it protects them, because the world doesn't always offer safe spaces for emotional truth, because the few times they did open up, it didn't go well, and because they're used to being the one who helps, not the one who needs help. The emotional mask is not a sign of dishonesty. It's a survival tool, but it also keeps people at a distance. It keeps the pain buried, and for INFJs who long for real connection, it becomes both a shield and a prison. Way number 3, channeling pain into creativity. One of the most powerful ways INFJs deal with emotional scars is by turning pain into creativity. When something hurts too much to say out loud, they find a different way to express it. They write, paint, compose music, or build something beautiful out of the pain. For the INFJ, creativity isn't just a hobby. It's a form of survival. INFJs are natural creators. Their minds are rich with ideas, feelings, symbols, and images. When they're hurting, they don't always talk about it, but the feelings have to go somewhere. So they create. They turn heartbreak into poetry, grief into paintings, frustration into characters, and loneliness into melodies. This process gives shape to emotions that feel impossible to explain. Creative expression gives them distance. Instead of saying, "I'm hurting," they can write a story about a character who's hurting. Instead of saying, "I feel abandoned," they can sketch an empty landscape. The emotion is still there, but it's wrapped in metaphor, color, or rhythm. It becomes something they can hold, study, and eventually release. This method helps INFJs process pain on their own terms. They don't have to justify their feelings to anyone. They don't have to worry about being misunderstood. Their art understands them. Their journal doesn't interrupt. The blank page accepts everything without judgment. It's one of the few places where they can be fully honest. And while their creations may come from deep wounds, they often inspire others. INFJs don't just express pain, they transform it. They take something dark and shape it into something others can feel and connect with. This makes them powerful storytellers, songwriters, and visual artists. People sense the emotion in their work, even if they don't know where it came from. Still, this process doesn't erase the pain. It helps, but it doesn't heal everything. INFJs may look like they're doing well because they're writing again, or because they're painting every weekend. But what's really happening is that they're using those tools to hold themselves together. The pain is still there, it's just flowing in a different direction. Creative outlets also allow INFJs to keep their scars private. Instead of explaining their story, they show pieces of it through what they make. Only those who look closely might catch the real meaning. And even then, INFJs rarely confirm it. They prefer to let others take what they need from the work. For the INFJ, the act of creating is personal, healing, and sacred. This quiet creativity is one of their greatest strengths. It allows them to carry emotional weight in a way that feels manageable. It gives them purpose in the middle of confusion, and it keeps them grounded when life feels like it's falling apart. INFJs don't always tell people when they're struggling, but if you pay attention to what they create, you might start to see the truth. The colors they choose, the words they write, the tone of their songs. Each one carries part of their story, pieces of pain turned into something lasting. Way number 4, seeking solitude. When INFJs are hurt, one of their first instincts is to withdraw. They retreat into their own space, away from noise, people, and pressure. Solitude becomes a shield, a way to feel safe when the outside world feels too heavy or unpredictable. But while this withdrawal can help them heal, it also adds to their sense of isolation. INFJs need time alone more than most types. Even on a normal day, social interaction drains them. But when they're emotionally wounded, that need for space becomes stronger. They need time to think, reflect, and process everything that happened. They need silence so they can hear their own thoughts again. And they need distance to feel emotionally stable. In solitude, INFJs try to make sense of what they're feeling. They ask themselves why it hurts, what it means, and what lesson they can take from it. This introspection is intense. They don't just replay the moment, they analyze it from every angle. What did they miss? Was it their fault? What does it say about the other person? This thinking can bring clarity, but it can also lead to overthinking and guilt. They may also isolate to protect others. When INFJs are in pain, they don't want to take it out on anyone. They don't want to snap, break down, or say something they'll regret. So instead of asking for help, they disappear. They assume people are better off not seeing them when they're broken. But in doing so, they shut people out, people who might have cared. Solitude gives the INFJ room to recharge. It lets them cry without being seen, question without being judged, and plan their next step in peace. But it also cuts them off from connection. The longer they stay isolated, the harder it is to reach out again. The silence becomes a habit. The walls grow higher. And soon, even if someone does call or check in, they're not sure how to respond. In some cases, INFJs may even romanticize the isolation. They tell themselves they're stronger alone, that they don't need anyone. That solitude is freedom. But deep down, they know they're just trying to stay safe. They miss connection. They miss being understood. They just don't know how to find that without risking more pain. INFJs don't isolate to punish anyone. They isolate to survive, to find calm in a storm. But what starts as a place of safety can become a cage if they stay too long. The key is balance. Solitude can be healing, but only if it leads back to life. INFJs need time alone, but they also need people who understand them. People who don't force them to speak, but sit with them in silence. People who see the quiet not as coldness, but as courage. Way number 5, helping others to avoid their own pain. INFJs are natural helpers. They care deeply about others and want to make the world a little easier for those around them. But sometimes this desire to help becomes a way to avoid dealing with their own pain. Instead of facing what hurts inside, they pour all their energy into fixing someone else. This often starts with empathy. INFJs can feel what others are feeling. They sense sadness, fear, and struggle, even when no one says anything. And because they've been there themselves, they feel a strong pull to step in. They offer advice, encouragement, comfort, and time. Anything to help the other person feel better. On the surface, this looks noble, and it is. But underneath, it's also a distraction. When INFJs are focused on someone else's problems, they don't have to face their own. They can ignore the pain sitting in their chest by pouring love into someone else's life. It feels productive. It feels good. But it doesn't make the inner pain go away. Helping others can become a shield. It gives the INFJ a sense of purpose, a sense of being needed. But it also keeps them from healing. They may give and give until they're empty, until there's nothing left for themselves. Then they crash, quietly, alone. In relationships, this dynamic can become unhealthy. The INFJ may take on the role of emotional caretaker, always supporting but never receiving support. They may stay in unbalanced friendships or toxic relationships because they believe they're helping even when they're the one being drained. This creates emotional burnout and deepens the scars they're trying to avoid. Over time, they may feel resentful, but they won't always say it. They'll keep helping even when it hurts because they don't know how to stop. And they may convince themselves that their pain doesn't matter as long as someone else is okay. But ignoring their wounds doesn't heal them. It just delays the pain. And no matter how many people they save, the part of them that's still bleeding stays unhealed until they finally turn inward. INFJs need to know that helping others is beautiful, but it's not a replacement for self-care. They deserve healing too. They deserve attention, rest, and compassion. Their pain is just as real as the pain they tend to in others. Way number 6, rationalizing emotions. INFJs often try to understand everything, especially their own emotions. When they're hurting, they don't always cry or vent. Instead, they start thinking. They break down what happened, why it happened, and what it means. They turn raw emotion into a mental puzzle. And while this can help them feel in control, it also keeps them from truly feeling what they need to feel. Rationalizing emotions is a defense mechanism. When an INFJ is deeply hurt, their first instinct isn't always to feel, it's to analyze. They ask questions like, what did I do wrong? Why did that person say that? What's the bigger lesson here? This intellectual approach helps them stay calm. It puts distance between them and the pain. But that distance also creates a block. Instead of allowing the emotion to move through them, they try to contain it in words, ideas, or theories. They may even criticize themselves for feeling something irrational. If they're sad, they'll tell themselves not to be. If they're angry, they'll try to justify the other person's behavior instead of allowing their own reaction. They overthink instead of feel. This habit often comes from early experiences. INFJs may have learned that emotional reactions aren't welcome. Maybe they were told to be the bigger person, or to understand both sides, even when they were the one who was hurt. Over time, they started to believe that emotions must be controlled, explained, or hidden, not felt fully. But emotions don't disappear just because we explain them. They stay under the surface. And for INFJs, who already tend to hold things in, this creates an internal pressure. The mind keeps turning, looking for answers, while the heart continues to ache. Rationalizing emotions also makes it hard for others to help. When INFJs finally open up, they often come across as calm and logical, even when they're suffering inside. Friends may think they're okay because they're speaking clearly or explaining things in a thoughtful way. But what the INFJ really needs in those moments is space to feel, without needing to explain everything. Learning to stop thinking and start feeling can be hard for INFJs. It feels messy. It feels scary, but it's also freeing. Letting the pain be pain, not a theory, not a metaphor, just pain, is how healing begins. INFJs carry more than most people will ever know. They feel deeply, care quietly, and suffer in silence, but they rarely show it. Instead, they internalize, mask, create, isolate, give, and overthink. These are the ways they hide scars that could shatter someone else. Each of these methods is a survival tool. They help the INFJ stay functional in a world that often doesn't understand their emotional depth. But they also keep others at a distance. They keep pain locked inside, and over time, that weight adds up. This doesn't mean INFJs are weak. It means they're strong in ways that go unseen. It means they've found ways to keep going without falling apart. But strength doesn't mean silence. And healing doesn't happen alone. If you're an INFJ, know this, your pain is valid. You don't need to hide it to be loved. You don't need to carry it alone to be respected. And you don't have to turn it into something beautiful just to make it acceptable. You deserve healing in its raw form. You deserve connection without the mask. You deserve to feel, to rest, and to be seen, not just for your calm surface, but for the storms you've survived. The scars you hide are not signs of failure. They are proof that you've lived, felt, endured, and kept going. And that is something no one should ever mistake for weakness.